Hey there, scholars. Walter Bowne here on a cold winter day in February after lunch, thinking I should do a video about composing effective sentences. So here I am. What I want you to do, take some notes. I want to see your notes. And I also want to see that you have an example of every single type of sentence. There's not many. I think I have 7 here. Just one example to add variety to your writing. And I get this from the great book, Models for Writers, 7th edition, that is largely used oftentimes in college, right? Freshman composition. All right, so let's begin. All right, number 1, subordination. You might have heard me talk about this. This process gives one idea less emphasis over another. Think of it as a 2-part sentence. You have an A and you have a B. If the material in part A is more essential to the meaning of the sentence, move it to part B. Here's an example. When he was only 2 years old, Josh Ball studied music. I'm not sure if that's true, Josh, but there it is. What's more important here? Well, that he studied at 2, not that he studied music. So you want to move it. All right, so the revised is Josh Ball studied music when he was only 2 years old. Right, that one is better use of subordination. Right. Words like because, if, as though, while, when, after, in order that, or with a relative pronoun, that, which, who, whomever, and what, largely introduces material, and then what comes after is the main part, right? It's the subject verb. Right? Oftentimes, you can change a regular sentence into a sentence that contains subordination, a 2-part sentence. That often works well with antithesis and other types of parallel structure. Just remember, what comes last is most important. The last word in the sentence is generally the most crucial and the one that is remembered. All right, think of it as the grand finale, right, of every sentence. The periodic sentence, okay, the second part. This type is a much longer type of subordinated sentence. The main clause is held in suspense until the end, subject and verb. For instance, while the wind whistled and the shutters shuddered, as the rain pounded and the lightning pierced the sky, with a steady pounding at the door from some unforeseen guest, comma, I turned on the bachelor. Subject I turned is the verb. And it's surprising because we don't expect I turned on the bachelor. This kind of stuff often works in humor or suspense because we don't expect what comes after all the dependent clauses there. All right, so that's a periodic sentence. The main clause is held at the end, and you want to emphasize the main clause at the end after building up some suspense. All right. The most common type of sentence is the loose sentence, where the main clause is up front. For instance, I turned on the bachelor while the wind, blah, 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 blah. Which one is better? Of course, the periodic sentence is better in that situation, because loose, it just seems ridiculous, right? But we tend to write more loose sentences because we expect the subject and verb to be at the beginning. I went to the store, I arrived to class. Those are examples of loose sentences. The details are then strung after the main clause. All right, we got that? The loose sentence. Fourth type, dramatically short sentence. You guys refuse to write these. It drives me crazy, but for some reason, you just avoid these types of sentences. The shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. It has a subject and a verb, and it makes a point dramatically. You add variety to your writing by mixing up these sentences with other types of sentences. Here's an example. After a long day at school with another AP physics project under my belt, another AP essay on Emerson, and 30 problems in Calc 2, I came home, opened the fridge, and pulled out a Coke. I was exhausted. I needed caffeine, but I really needed sleep. All right, I'm doing a few things there. All right, I'm using subordination. I'm actually using coordination later, as we'll see. And then I use dramatically short sentences using an aphora. I was, I needed, so it all works well together. Right? So that's a dramatically short sentence. Use them. You don't want to write them all the time because then it seems like you're in 2nd grade. However, stop with all the nonsense with these crazy sentences that I'm trying to find out what the heck you mean. All right, active versus passive voice. You guys are getting zinged on passive voice. When you write, the soup was stirred by the cook, you're writing in passive voice. Who is doing the action? The cook is. So write, the cook stirred the soup. You want the subject doing the action. All right, you want it in the active doing it, actually doing it. An example would be the ship was pushed by the high winds onto the rocks. Well, who's doing the pushing? Well, the high winds. So then say high winds push the ship onto the rocks. That's active. 90% of the time you want to use active voice, maybe even more than that. Active voice uses fewer words, it's more direct and emphatic, it's clearer. Passive voice is used when the subject is not needed, like legislation was passed last night to legalize pot. That's not true, but who passed it? Well, the legislators, but sometimes you don't need the actor, right? Coordination. The writer has several parts. You want each part to carry equal weight, so write a coordinated sentence. I can't decide to ask Sue, Jane, or Mary to the prom. That's an example. All girls are equal. You would use subordination if you wrote, while Sue and Jane are amazing, it's Mary I really like. You see the difference? And not, Mary's the one I really like, even though Sue and Jane are amazing. Because Sue and Jane, you're emphasizing Sue and Jane, even though Mary's the one you really like. Well, that's true. Put it at the end and use subordination. An example, Walter walked into class. He turned on the overhead. He then gave instructions for the weekly essay. All right, that's all coordinated. All right, did this, did this, did this. All right, the same grammatical structure. He walked, he turned, he gave instructions. Another famous example is Veni Vidi Vici, right? I came, I saw, I conquered. This is all, that's also anaphora. All right, parallelism. We're going to study all different types of parallelism. We've already studied many different parts of parallelism, but when you want the parts of a sentence not only to be coordinated, but also similar grammatically, use parallel structure, in which there are many types, as you'll learn. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's absolutely perfect. It's ABBA, right? AP students complaining about essays will be banished. AP students griping about grading will be mocked. AP students crying about college will be given tissues, right? So there I'm using anaphora, but it's all parallel structure, right? Banished, mocked. It's the last part. See that? The last part there is actually not perfectly parallel structure. I just couldn't think of another word for banished, mocked, another type of verb with ed, right? But you get the idea. AP students, AP students, AP students. Hopefully this 7-minute video has helped you learn different types of sentences. Now utilize these, employ these, apply these in your writing so you can create beauty in your compositions. Cheers. Write these down. Give me an example. I'll check them in class sometime soon. Take care. Enjoy your snow day. Adios.